All right, cool. So, welcome to week 3 of this CAD and 3D printing course. Today, I'm just going to go over a couple of extra bits that you can use, giving you a couple extra tools. And then we're also going to go into assemblies. Um, so, assemblies are pretty cool because I'm sure that you might be interested in making designs with more than one part. And that's assemblies is kind of where you go to make those. Anyways, let's just dive into it. Again, if you haven't filled out the attendance or absence forms, make sure to fill it out now. Um, because so far I think we're pretty on track for food on week 5. So if we keep this up, then hopefully um, I'll get to bring food. So yeah. Anyways, let's just jump right into it today. There's quite a bit of content to go through. So yeah, today we're going to be working with canvases for a little bit, but then we're also going to highlight assemblies, like I said earlier. So yeah, so jumping right into it, we're just going to launch Fusion and make this engineering fountain for assignment 7. So there's a lot of times where you might want to use things that exist in the real world in your designs, right? So you might have a piece that is broken that you want to uh, maybe design over and like make a new piece and I don't know, 3D printed or something. I've done that a couple times. Just today, actually, I wanted to take something that I had um, around me, and then kind of like morph it into um, another thing that I wanted to print for my Halloween costume. So I took a photo of the part that wanted to like combine the thing I was printing it with, and then kind of scaled it and then made kind of like a cutout to make both of the things fit together. Um, if you're interested, I can send photos later. But anyways, canvases are a pretty useful tool. So we're just going to demonstrate that by making the engineering fountain today. But obviously, if you take any other picture, you can use it as a reference when you make designs. Another common use case for this is if you like designing like cars and stuff like that. Some people will like either take the pictures and profiles of existing cars from like the front, the side, the top, and the rear. And then they'll put them on multiple canvases, and then you can kind of sketch and draw around those canvases to make a model. Um, so yeah, let's just jump right into it. I'm gonna hide this data panel. All right, cool. So I'm just in a new design. Send photos. Okay, I'll send photos later. Yeah, after class. So again, I'm in this new design, blank canvas, and then we're just instead of creating a sketch, we're going to be adding a canvas. So up here on the top right, um, is this canvas button. You can see when I hover over it, it pops up with like that example I was talking about earlier, where people might have like a photo or a drawing of a car, and then they use that 2D photo or drawing, and then they turn it into something 3D. So I'm just gonna click it, and then I'm gonna upload a file that I sent to everyone. So if you go into the Discord, there's this nice starry photo of the engineering fountain. It's a nice, pretty solid side profile, so um, it'll allow us to kind of replicate it. So I'm just going to insert it from my computer. I have to find it. And then it'll ask you to select a face or a plane that you want to put it on. So similar to a sketch, we're going to choose one of these. In my case, I'm going to choose this plane here, which is the front plane, but it doesn't really matter that much. You'll see when I click on that, this canvas will appear with a bunch of options. So if you wanted to scale it or something like that, you can use these here. Um, this canvas opacity is pretty useful depending, you know, on what you're doing. Some people might want it lighter or darker. I'm just going to leave it at 50 today, but if you have a preference, um, more power to you. Um, but yeah, if you ever want to scale things, you can use that. But I'm just gonna leave it as it is today. So I'm just happy with this. I'm just gonna press OK. So now you see when I orbit around, we have this 2D image of the engineering fountain. And now you can use this image to recreate engineering fountain in CAD. So now we're going to start making a sketch. So top left, make a sketch. I'm going to select the same plane that the canvas is on. And then I'm going to start drawing the profile. Now, similar to last week, I'm going to be um, being quote unquote lazy by just modeling one side of the engineering fountain, and then we're going to copy it around, right? So, you know, again, all of these are basically identical. So, um, you know, we can just model one of them and then we can have Fusion do the rest of the work for us. So I'm just going to start tracing for today. Um, Fully defined lines and stuff like that isn't going to be required just because this is pretty arbitrary right here. So I'm going to sketch this engineering fountain. Uh, so I'm going to start by tracing the straight lines. So go start right here, go across. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of getting a general idea. You can see this photo isn't perfectly straight because when I draw a 90-degree um, line, it's not completely level, but it's okay. So I'm going to just start with those. And then I need to replicate this curve. Now, um, you may think that this looks like a circle, but it actually isn't. I believe the engineering fountain is modeled after the e to the x function. So you can't actually replicate this curve with a simple circle. We're going to have to use the fit point spline, similar to how we did um, with the hair dryer wire from last week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a fit point spline, and I'm just going to work my way all the way down. So at the beginning, it may not look like it's lining up with it, but if I click more and more, it'll add more points, and then it'll more closely represent this curve. So I'm just going to start at the top with this point at the end of this line, and then I'm going to start clicking down. For me, I personally recommend you stop at like each end of these parts of the engineering fountain because we're going to separate them later. So I'm going to click one point there and I'm going to continue clicking there, going all the way down to the first point with me. So I'm happy with this curve. So I'm going to press this check mark here and bam, we have our curve. So it's getting kind of hard to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that you can hide your canvas whenever you like. So you know, we have this image, but maybe the opacity is a little high. I could have changed that. But you can also hide it similar to sketches and bodies up here, the little eyeball tool. You can see how when I hide it, we have this basic shape. It's not the full engineering fountain yet. So I'm going to add a couple more lines. I'm going to add a vertical line here and another one there. So adding a line. Another one here. All right. So when I hide the canvas again, you can see there's kind of three separate parts. So I'm just going to trim away the excess with the trim tool, just like that. And again, you don't have to do it exactly the way I did it. You could have done a spline from here to there and then from there to there. But personally, that's just my preference. Sometimes I like to add more as I go down and then trim away later. So you'll kind of develop your own style as you design more and more. But that's personally how I would do it. Anyways, I'm pretty happy with this general shape. So I'm just going to finish the sketch. I'm going to hide the canvas again, just so you can see. But we have this profile here. Now, with this, we can extrude it just like we've done on a bunch of other assignments. And I'm purposely going to extrude it the wrong way, um, just so you can, just so you see how the way you extrude things might affect things later. So I think yeah. So I'm just extruding in the one-sided direction right now, but I'm gonna go back and change this later. But you'll see why in a little bit once we start adding more and more. So I'm gonna press OK. We have our basic engineering fountain, or at least a quarter of it. But now we want to copy it in a circle. So just like the gear and stuff like that, we can use the circular pattern tool on not only sketches, but also bodies. So I'm going to basically duplicate these around a circle. In this case, it's going to be kind of around this origin right here. So I'm going to go under create and then pattern and then circular pattern. Here, it's going to ask me what type of circular pattern I want to do. In this case, it did guess correctly. I am patterning the bodies, but depending on what you're doing, one of these options might be better. So I'm just going to do bodies, but the features one is pretty useful if you ever want to circular pattern features. All right. So it asks me to select objects. So there's two separate bodies. So I'm going to click on both of them. And then it's going to ask me to select an axis. I'm going to click this one, this vertical one right here. How did I get to circular pattern? It's under create pattern and circular pattern. Anyways, I'm going to select the axis, which is in my case, this green one right here. And I can select the correct quantity. In this case, it's 4. And you'll see here that it kind of is patterning almost off center. And that's because of the way we extruded it. So I'm just going to confirm this, and then I'm going to fix that right now. So you'll see it's kind of it's not like centered. properly. So to fix that, I'm going to edit the extrude by changing it from one side to symmetric. So when I do that, it'll extrude symmetrically from the plane that we drew it on. I'm going to cut that in half. So I'm going to do 0.5. And you see when I edit it and I press OK, it's properly patterned, at least the way we want it in this case. Obviously, if you're designing something else and the other way is how you were wanted it, then that's great. But in this case, we wanted it to be symmetrical. So that's how we do that. Can you show us again the copy and rotate? So I'm assuming you're talking about the circular pattern. So if I move it back in the timeline, you just go under create pattern and then circular pattern. The object type is set to bodies, which is good. You select the objects. In this case, it's this one and this one. And then you select an axis. So in this case, it's the green one. If we were to choose like the red one, it would be all weird like this. So you can say no by clicking on the X and selecting the correct one. Distribution is full because we want it to be even around 360 degrees. Uh, and then we set the quantity to 4. You would press OK, but I already made it, so I'm going to press cancel. And again, if it was not centered or symmetrical like we wanted it to be, you could go back to the timeline and edit your extrude feature right here. And then you would change the direction to symmetric. And typically you half the distance because the extrude will extrude the distance that you had initially in both directions. So typically you cut it in half if you want it to be the same width. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna assume it did. Let me know if you need help with that though. Okay, so we have our basic engineering fountain. Um, you'll see that we want to add some extra detail on each of the sides. So I'm just going to add it to one side and then we can, uh, copy it around every side. So I'm just going to make sure I'm doing it on the right one. Okay, cool. So this is the initial one that we built. So I'm just going to build off of it. What you can do is you can slide the timeline backwards and then edit this. And then when you push it forward, um, it would make all the edits to the body that you made to all of them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to edit just one of them, and then I'm going to move the pattern in the timeline. And I'm just doing this just to show you that like stuff like this is possible. But typically I would probably add those features before I pattern it. Um, but again, the cool thing is you can add all of those features and move things in the timeline afterwards, uh, if you design things correctly. So I'm making sure that I'm editing the first one, which is this one, not the patterned ones. Because if I edited one of the pattern ones and I tried to move the pattern uh, before it, then it wouldn't let me because like that edit would be dependent on the pattern. But if you modify this one, it won't be. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, I'm gonna show the canvas again just so I can kind of see a general idea of this detail right here. I'm gonna create a sketch on this side of the fountain. And then I'm going to do a similar line and fit point spline thing that we did to the first extrusion. So I'm going to start maybe about right here. Just kind of follow my way around the fountain like that. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. Oops. Okay. So you'll see here that this line isn't exactly where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to add a constraint here. So I'm going to take this horizontal edge from the body, and then I'm going to shift click this line. I'm going to make it collinear. I'm going to make these collinear as well. Cool. So if I hide the canvas, you can see here that all these lines are black and they're fully defined. I'm just making sure that they're just following this edge right here, just so it's nice and even and we don't have any weird extra bits on the bottom when we go to cut out the detail. So I'm going to show the canvas again, and I'm going to utilize the fit point splines. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. I'm just kind of going down from one point to the other. Oh, that one's a bit high. Adjust this down. Making a spline. Hitting the check mark when I'm done.
Early.
And yeah, so I'm going to hide the canvas again. You can see here that if I hover my mouse over it, you'll kind of see that these are nice and closed, right? It'll kind of highlight around like this closed feature that I've created. So that's just kind of confirming that I did it the way I wanted it to. And because they're closed, we can do things like revolving or extruding them. In this case, we're going to do an extruded cut. Everyone with me? All right. I'm gonna guess that everyone is. So I'm gonna finish this sketch here, and then I'm gonna add this detail. So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna be cutting it into what we have right now. So I'm gonna do the extrude feature. It's gonna ask me to select profiles. I'm gonna select this one and this one. You can see the arrow is going in the wrong direction. If I was to pull it out, it would kind of extrude it in this direction and add material. But we want to cut away. So if I go in this direction, you see it's red and it's cutting it away. So I'm going to do maybe about 0.2 looks good. Maybe even 0.1. Uh, Fusion guessed correctly because I want it to cut away. So the operation's set to cut. Um, Profile is where we're starting because uh, we drew right on this face right here. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to press OK. Now we have one detail. We can't get the constraints to work on the smaller portion.
When I was trying to add constraints to like the smaller part, like I like the collinear, like it won't let me. I don't know why, and it's still blue.
Is it like throwing you an error?
Yeah,
What does the error say?
failed to solve. Try revisiting constraints.
Okay, I'm gonna sketch again. Did you hide the canvas just to make sure that you're selecting the right line?
Yeah,
Okay. So are you trying to do like this line right here?
yeah.
Okay. And are the lines on the sides okay?
No, all three of those are blue.
Blue. Okay. Um, Another technique that you could do, I'm gonna do it on the space, is you should be able to project this profile onto your sketch, and that might make it a little bit easier to constrain to. So if you delete the lines that you have right now, you can kind of start fresh with like a projection, which might be easier.
Okay.
So if you delete those, and then press P, it'll open up this like project, um, like window. You select the face that you want, and then when you press OK, it will take this profile and then it'll bring like those lines into your sketch. So when I do that, you'll see that it kind of creates nice points for you to use. Um, and then you can kind of build off of those projections. Um, that might make things easier. So I have this line. I go across and draw over it. And then you can see I have this highlighted profile. What if your line is green? Um, is the green part like these? Because like these little green uh these green parts are part of the spline and not the line. So if you manipulate these, then you can see it like changes how the spline goes. But if it's more of like the yellowish color, then you may have accidentally fixed something. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, yeah. From the looks of that photo, it's probably these like lines that you can manipulate for the spline. Um, Here, I'll show it to everyone. So yeah, from this photo, it might be a little bit harder to see just because the canvas is there. But if you hide it, then it should be pretty similar to mine. Obviously, it just kind of depends on which way your spline goes. Um, but like mine has those green things too, if you look there. I forgot how I turned them all off, but if you see them green, then that's how you manipulate the spline, if that makes sense. Does that make does that make sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, I need to figure out how I like hid those. Um, I forgot how I did it. Um, but yeah, don't worry if your lines are green because that just means you made a spline. If it's like the yellowish color, then you fixed it, which is not good. Anyone else having trouble here?
So what was the final tool you used to get it to trim out?
Trim out?
Yeah, or like that last step you took?
Oh, to cut it into here?
Oh, yeah.
Um, I used the extrude tool. So here, I can do it again. So just like how we extruded like the blocks and stuff like that, I need to show the sketch again. Um, you just click on the closed profiles that you made, and then you just make sure the direction is going into the part. And it should highlight red, but if it doesn't, you can set the operation to cut manually right here. Okay, so you can see now that we have this detail on one side of the fountain, but we want it on both sides in this case. So there's a number of ways you could do it. I'm gonna maybe just run through a couple of them. Um, but you can mirror the feature, which I'll do right now. But you can also make another extrude. So I'm just going to mirror it, but then I'll also do the extrude just to show you that there's more than one way of doing it. And, you know, the way you choose to do it might depend on the part or just your personal preference. Um, so in this case, I'm going to go under create and mirror right there. In the object type, instead of bodies, I'm going to do features this time. I'm going to select this as the extrude as the feature. And then for the mirror plane, it's going to be this one right here. So it's going to be the same plane that we were working with before. And when I mirror it, it should duplicate it. So that's one way. The other way that you could do it is you could just make a whole nother extrude. Um, you can even use the same sketch. So I'll do that too. Uh, Again, just like when we did for our initial extrusion, you click on the two profiles. Instead of start on profile plane, I'm going to change it to object and I'm going to select the face that I want it to extrude from. and then I'm going to extrude it. So it's another way to do it. When I press OK, you can see it looks exactly the same, right? Again, depending on your scenario and what you're designing, you might want to do two extrudes because maybe this side needs uh, more extrusion than the other, right? So, if you did the two extrude method, you might have a little bit more control about on like how much each side is extruded. But then if you wanted them to be symmetrical, you can just use the mirror tool. Personally, just for this, I'm gonna just delete that second extrude and then I'm gonna bring back the mirror. But that's just my personal preference for this specific scenario. So yeah. So you'll see now that this side is completed, so I'm happy with this. But the detail isn't on all of the other ones. And that's because if you look at the order in which I designed this, you can see that I made the initial extrusion here, but then I patterned it and then added more features. So again, similar to last week, if you just rearrange some things in your timeline, you can make your model look very different. So in this case, I'm going to push this circular pattern all the way to the front. So I'm going to hold down and drag it up. And when I do that, all of those edits that we made to the first one have been performed on the rest of them. So yeah, again, if you just were to do it like in this way from the get-go, that's perfectly cool too. But I'm just showing you that stuff like this is possible. Because one of the great things about CAD is you can go back and easily change things um, if you design it to be changed easily. Can you show us the process of the detail on the other side? Okay, so again, there's two ways that I thought about doing this. There might be others, but these are the ones that came to my mind first. Personally, I like the mirror, so I go under Create and Mirror. I set the type to features because I'm not mirroring a body. I'm mirroring an operation that we did. So features, it'll still say objects, but you just select the feature. You can either click the the cutout itself, or you should be able to click the timeline too. Then you have to specify the plane at which you want the mirror to happen. And because we extruded symmetrically, there's already a plane in the middle. It's good. So I'm going to select that one. And then I just leave the compute type to adjust, but if you wanted to change it, you could. And then I just press OK. What's the difference between faces and features for the mirror object type? It's a good question. I'm pretty sure if you like mirrored like a face, if you had like multiple different like operations going on, like maybe like a bunch of holes and like pockets and stuff like that, you could select one face, and it would duplicate it across the other one. I honestly don't really, I've never really used it, so um, I'm sure you could find a use case for it, but I personally haven't used it. Um, you'll kind of see that there's a bunch of different tools that do very similar things, or like there's multiple ways of doing things. So like I might gravitate towards certain tools, just because like I either have experience with them in the past or with another software. Um, so there might be there's definitely some tools in here that I've never used before. Um, but if you use them and you like it, then like I would say go for it. Okay. Anyways, I'm just gonna wrap this assignment up real quick. So the last part is just making a base with a hole in it. Um, so I'm just gonna create a circle with another smaller circle. So I'm gonna create a sketch, select this bottom face, and then I'm gonna create two circles centered on the origin. Gonna dimension them, like, I don't know, one, and then this one can be like 15. Why not? And then I'm just gonna extrude it after pressing OK to close the sketch. And extrude this. Oftentimes it might ask you to select this rectangle as well. So make sure you specify that. Gonna add some distance. Yeah, 0.5 millimeter looks good here. And then I'm just gonna press OK. But yeah, that is assignment 7. So if you are following along, feel free to take a screenshot now, and save it for when you submit your assignments uh, later. But does anyone have any questions about this assignment?
Or like the extreme, like the circle, like it covers like ev oh, I see what the problem is. Never mind. One sec.
Oh yeah, you want to make sure. I'm.
A circle's not on the bottom, it's like in the middle of the drawing.
Oh yeah, make sure you select the right plane when creating your sketch. Um, if you were to select the wrong plane, this is actually I'm glad that you brought that up because this is pretty useful. If you ever like wanted to change the plane that your sketch was made on, uh, if you right click on your sketch and then you click redefine sketch plane, you can do it. So before it was like right here, but if I wanted to change it, let's say, you know, I mean this is wrong now, but if I like clicked on this plane and I redefined it there, then you can see the whole like feature and everything moves up with it. Um, so I don't want that. So I'm gonna put it back. Oh, it's extruding the wrong way. All right, here we go. But yeah, redefining sketch planes is it's a neat trick if you ever accidentally select the wrong plane. Uh-oh. There's a fire alarm in brand. I hope everything is okay. The redefined sketch plane is blank when clicking on it. Is it, are you saying that like you can't see any like extra planes? Is that why? Is that what you're saying? I'm guessing that's what you're meaning. Yeah, okay. So it's just because the origin is hidden. So I mean, you could redefine the sketch plane to be any of these planes. But if you wanted to like use one of the origin planes, they typically get hidden after um your first operation. So if you show it again, then you should be able to select them. Yeah, that works too if you wanted to. Um, but you can also just click on a face, because the face is a plane. When you want to, how do I make the smaller circle in the center disappear? Um, I mean, for this assignment, you do want the hole, so I would recommend keeping it. But if you don't want it for, whatever reason, you should be able to just like uh specify the profile. So you can just like click that and then it should disappear. Or it should extrude with it. Or if you accidentally clicked it before, if you click it again, it should go away. When you want to select items for the circular pattern, it only allows you to select one object. Okay, I'm going to answer Gavin's question first. Do you need to color everything before taking a screenshot for submission? Not on all of the assignments. I'm pretty sure this one doesn't have an appearance like section in the rubric. We can look at it real quick. Um, but if you were if you wanted to see what I'm grading on, you can go under the course material and open the rubric. Oh, I already had it open. Whatever. So here, if we look at this one, um, like appearance isn't on this assignment, so you don't have to add it, but you're more than welcome to. But you'll see for like the next one, it is required. So if you're ever wondering, feel free to reference this rubric. Oh, you can't look at grades. I mean, so I haven't graded it yet. So yeah. Anyways, I hope that answered your question. Um, Going back to Reza when he's saying when you're saying that it only allows you to select one object, um, my guess is that maybe um your object type might not be the correct one. So when you set the object type, if you're doing the circular pattern in this case, you want to make sure it's uh, selected as bodies. And then when you go under object, you should be able to click both of them. Oops. Cool. All right. So hopefully everyone understands that assignment. Um, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me later. Um, but now we're going to get into assemblies. So assemblies are great because typically when you design things, Um, you know, you're not designing one part, you're designing whole systems. Um, and it's really convenient to, or it would be really nice to take your individual parts that you've designed and then just kind of mash them together to kind of visualize the whole thing assembled before you do it. So assemblies are a great way to do that. It'll allow you to catch some things that you may have overlooked when you're designing. So sometimes like when you're designing parts, you're like, oh yeah, like this part will go into this, and this part will go into that. But then when you go into make an assembly, um, you'll kind of start visualizing how someone might assemble it in real life. And depending on how you designed it, you might recognize that some things that you designed are like impossible to make. So you could be like, oh, like for you to bolt this into this, like the bolt would have to phase through this part in order for that to happen. And things phasing through each other aren't really something that um, is generally possible in day-to-day life. So um, using an assembly before you make things can be a useful way to catch some of these um, before you make it. Obviously, sometimes not every time, but it's a good place to start. Anyways, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna download a library of components, and then we're gonna put them all together. So today we're gonna be doing this in the form of Legos, but instead of doing it um, like by hand, we're doing it on the computer. So you can download the zip file of parts here. Should be underneath the engineering fountain in the Discord. And when you do, we're going to start inserting it into the data panel. So I'm going to save that, open the data panel. I've already created a folder, but if you wanted to, take a folder, there's this new folder button. Um, Once you find where you want to put the parts, you click upload. You open the folder. Make sure you unzip the file, by the way. You try to upload zipped files, it's going to get mad at you. So I'm opening the folder. I already unzipped it, highlighted all the parts, and then I pressed open. It'll give you kind of like a confirmation that you want to upload all of these. In this case, I do. So I'm going to press upload. It'll take a little bit to put them all in your Fusion drive. But then once it's in, then we can get started. Everyone good up to here? Where can we find the upload button? If you don't have the data panel visible, you can click kind of like this array of little squares. It's like 9 squares. If you click on it, it should open up the data panel for you to add parts and stuff into it. If it says like new project or something like that, you might need to make a project first, and then upload it. Um, but this is typically how I store my files. Everyone good? Uh, yeah, it might take like a little bit. Sometimes like the photos don't render immediately. But you saw up here that like I had a confirmation when things finish uploading. Um, but yeah, don't worry too much. It should upload pretty soon. Um, to get the assembly ready, I'm just gonna open up a new design here. Um, and before you insert parts, you have to save it. So before I've just kind of been starting sketching and making stuff. But now we have to save the file first. So I'm gonna do Control S, I'm gonna name it something, save it. And now we'll be able to insert parts. Has everyone uploaded their stuff yet? It's okay if it's taking a little bit. I just want to make sure I'm not going too fast. Okay, cool. I'm gonna assume that everyone's good here. Um, Typically, when I start an assembly, I just kind of think about the part that would be like a good base, right? So for a car, you would kind of consider the foundation of a car to be like the chassis or something like that. So I typically kind of choose like a really large part to kind of act as the base part. So in this case, there's like a 2x6 piece that spans across the whole car. And I'm going to use that as my base. You can technically use whatever piece you want, but I wouldn't recommend you use like a tire or like a wheel or something as your base. So I'm just going to start with this 2x6 plate here. Now to insert it into the design, again, make sure you've saved the file first because it won't let you put anything in before you do that. You can usually right click the files and then do insert into current draw design, or you can just drag and drop. So I'm just gonna drag it in. It'll render this part here. It's only the first piece, so I don't really feel the need to manipulate it at all. So I'm just gonna leave it there. It's in a decent spot, so I'm just gonna press OK. But you'll see that I can actually move this piece around, especially if I do like the move command. Come on. Hello. That's weird. Okay. Anyways, you should be able to move these components, but you want your like foundation piece to be immovable. So oh wow, it does it by default now. Okay, never mind. That's really nice. Before I guess my Fusion updated, um, initially you would have to like ground pieces or your base piece, but I guess you don't now, which is really nice. Um, so wow, that's cool. Anyways, your first piece will be immovable. So when you insert it, that's why I recommend you use kind of like a large piece. If you ever wanted to change that, then you could like unground it right here. But I'm just gonna leave it as is. So that just means that this piece isn't gonna move. And then when we start adding more pieces into it, um, it will all the pieces will move in relation to this base piece. So we have our first component. I'm going to drag the second piece. You can see it's kind of like phasing through this plate here. So I'm going to start moving it away. So for this front or rear axle, you can kind of see that it sits underneath this plate here. So I'm going to use these arrows to just kind of manipulate it into kind of the general area that it's going to be. Personally, I like to move the part a little bit farther away just just so I can kind of confirm that the part is going in where I want it to go when I add joints in, and I'll do that in a minute. So you can kind of see here, like, you know, eventually the piece is going to be about right here, but I'm making sure I'm moving it a little bit farther away. How did I move the piece? When I inserted it, a bunch of these arrows pop up. Um, if you've already pressed OK, you should be able to use the move command and it'll allow you to move the piece. But in general, I've already moved it to the place where I want it to be. So now I'm going to start specifying it to be exactly where I want it to be. So to do that, I'm going to create a joint. So if you've used any other CAD programs, the joint tool is a little bit different than some of the other ones. So a lot of them are kind of like based on like faces and stuff like that. But I find that joints are pretty effective when you use edges. Um, so I'm gonna use like the edge of these parts to kind of join them together. Um, so yeah. So to create a joint, there's this button here. I'm gonna close the data panel just so you can see a little bit better. You can also go assemble and joint or just press J. All of them do the same thing. For pieces like this, I personally like to use the two edge intersection joint. So I I set that to both of them. And then you'll see here that it'll ask me to select four different edges. So two edges on one part and two edges on another part. Can you please show us how to unground the piece again? Well, the first part should be grounded, so I didn't unground it at all. Where can you find the joint again? The joint tool is right here, or you can just press J. Um, but anyways, I need to select four different edges for this joint to work out. So you'll see here that they're numbered 1 and 2 for each part. So I'm going to select an edge that corresponds with the other edge. So edge 1 for the first component should match up with edge 2. So in my case, like if I selected this bottom edge on this plate and then this kind of top edge on this axle piece, those would be like a good 1 and 1. And then like a perpendicular corner right here, and then there would also be great for the next set. So I'm going to select this edge and this edge for the first piece, and then the corresponding edges on this part. So this one and this one. And you'll see that the parts will kind of fly into each other. Sometimes like one part will fly to like another part and you don't want it to fly in that direction. But if you already have other joints, once you confirm it, it'll go back to where it's supposed to be. So it's joined in the way I want it. I can double check the kind of motion that this joint is going to be subjected to. In this case, like, I kind of want all these pieces to be combined into one, to be one rigid piece. So I'm going to leave the type as rigid, but there's a bunch of different options depending on what you're putting together. But today we're just going to do wow, I can't talk, rigid and revolute, which was the second edge you selected. I'm just going to insert another part and I'm just going to do it again. So don't worry if you missed it the first time, I will do it again. So again, set it to rigid. It's usually default as rigid. Um, you can even preview the motion. When you do rigid, it just kind of shakes both of them. So yeah. So this joint is good. I'm gonna press OK. And then I'm just gonna start adding more pieces. So I'm gonna open this data panel again, and I'll just add another one of those axles. So I'm gonna drag it in, gonna kind of move it around. Again, it's in the general area that it's gonna be when I add the joints. I'm gonna press OK. I'm gonna add a joint by pressing this or pressing J on the keyboard. I'm gonna set this to two edge intersection in this case. I'm gonna select two edges on one part. So let's select this bottom edge and this bottom edge. And then I'm gonna select the corresponding edge on the other part. So because I selected this one first, I'm gonna select this one first as well, and then this one. The parts will fly. You'll see that like when I create a joint, like the other parts won't move with it. And again, don't worry, because once you confirm it, then all the joints will be kind of put together, and it should look correct. The motion's rigid. I like that. So I'm going to press OK. And then you see when I pressed OK, like the pieces went back to where they're supposed to be. Does that make sense? I'm just going to kind of like continue doing it for a couple other parts. If you still are trying to understand this, then don't worry, because I'm just going to be doing it a bunch of times. I will be doing the wheels in a little bit, just because those can be a little bit funky sometimes. So I'm going to add this rear piece. It's called the roof here. Not really sure why, because it's not really covering anyone's head, but that's okay. Let me move this piece kind of far away, not too far. I'm going to create a joint. Again, I like the two edge intersection. I'm going to select an edge, this bottom edge, one perpendicular to it. And then I'm going to select the corresponding edges. So there and there. We'll fly in. Everything's good. And it's still rigid because I haven't really changed it. Okay. So now that I have a couple pieces in, I'm going to start doing one of the wheels. Um, a cool thing that you can do in Fusion and a lot of other CAD programs is you can make an assembly, but you can also make assemblies inside assemblies. So that's what people typically call sub-assemblies. So typically, or in this case, like I want to make a sub-assembly because, there's four wheels and tires. And instead of, you know, adding a joint for every wheel and tire, I can just do it once and then copy the sub-assembly into each corner. So to make my sub-assembly, I'm going to create a new design and then I'm going to save it just like I saved the first one. So I'll call this like wheel and tire assembly. And then I'll start inserting components. So I'm going to start with the wheel. I'm going to press OK. And then I'm going to add the tire. Now you'll see here, like this is a good example. Like even though I've inserted the tire, I haven't confirmed it yet. But you see that when I put the tire in, it's basically in the right spot. Like it's basically exactly where I want it. Um, but personally, I like moving it away just to kind of confirm that I'm putting the piece in um, when I add the joint. So you'll see here, they're obviously not in the right place. So when I create a joint, uh, it'll fly in and then I can kind of confirm it. Um, for round stuff, I typically like to use the simple joint. So in this case, I'll like select this edge here and then like this edge of the wheel. Typically, I think you double click this one and then it flies into place. So we have this nice subassembly. It's kind of in the right spot where I want it. So I'm going to confirm it. And then I'm going to save it. So I'm going to save this just to kind of save the file. And now you'll see in the data panel, we have a new thing here. This is the wheel and tire assembly that we made earlier. So now that we saved it, I can insert it into the design and you'll see now it's both the wheel and the tire. So that's good. I'm going to start by putting it on this axle. So I'm going to put it near here and I'm going to create another joint. Okay. I'm gonna do the wheel again, because it seems like a couple people having a little bit of trouble. Save the file, insert both components. First one is already good. I'm gonna drag the tire in. Again, it's not joined yet. I'm gonna press OK. I'm gonna add a joint. I'm doing the simple joint. Again, my selections are clear, so I'm making sure I'm selecting the edge of this right here. And then this corresponding edge here, I'm going to double click and it should fly into place. Yeah, I can show it again. Okay. So Shelby made a good comment earlier. Sometimes like you might accidentally be like selecting the wrong thing when you like are making constraints or even joints. So if you're kind of like zoomed out and stuff like that, sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult. So I like to get in like pretty close just to confirm that I'm selecting the right thing. Um, and it'll kind of become more important when we join the wheel to the axle. Anyways, for the edge on the tire, I'm just selecting this outer edge here. So this is the face. Here's the outer edge. You'll see when I make joints, like there's kind of like a mini origin like on my mouse. So right now you can see like there's like the green, red, and blue line. on that like dot. So it's kind of like showing you like this is exactly like what you're selecting. So in this case, like I want to be selecting the center of the circle here. So I'm gonna hover over the edge and you'll see that the origin thing um, moves away from my cursor and then centers itself on the circle, or yeah, on the edge of this circle, or on the center of this circle, which is on the edge of the tire. Sorry, I can't talk. So you click on this and then you click on the corresponding edge that you want this to be aligned to. So in this case, I want it to fly to this edge right here. You'll see when I put my mouse there, the mini origin is centered on the circle, which is good. So I double click it and then it should fly into place like we want. Does that make sense? Okay. So back to the main assembly, I'm going to be adding a joint from this tire or from the wheel and tire assembly to this axle. And this is where it can get a little bit more tricky. And this is why you want to make sure you're zoomed in so you can see exactly what you're selecting. Okay, so I'm going to create a joint here. Again, I'm just going to keep it as a simple joint. So these, just the first ones are selected. And then I'm going to make sure that I select the right point on the sub-assembly to um, join itself to the main assembly. So you'll see here where like this kind of like the Lego Technic axle um, kind of profile is. You'll see there's a bunch of different faces and edges that your mouse might want to try to snap to. So you want to make sure that you're being like really specific about what you're snapping to. So in this case, like if my mouse gets too close to one of these edges here, you'll see like the mini origin will snap to that corner instead of the center of like this axle or wheel. So we don't want that. We want to make sure it's centered just like how we did on the wheel and on the subassembly. So to do that, you want to kind of double check before you confirm it. So when I put my mouse kind of like in like the middle of this curve, not like exactly in the middle, because if it's exactly in the middle, that's also like a snap point. So if it's kind of like on one of like the thirds, you can see that it moves away from my cursor and centers itself on the axle. So I want that. So I'm going to confirm it by clicking it. And because I clicked on this one right here, I'm going to select a corresponding edge that I want it to align with. In this case, I want it to align with this edge here. So when I do that, you'll see the tire doesn't go with it, but it will in a moment. And because it's a wheel, I'm going to change it from rigid to revolute under the motion. So if you were looking for that, instead of position, I go to the motion tab and then I do revolute. Typically, it's pretty good at predicting which axis it wants to rotate on. In this case, it's the Z axis. But when I preview it, you can see the wheels spinning nice and smoothly, just like we like. I'll do it incorrectly on the other side just so you can kind of see what could go wrong. So I like that. When I confirm it and press OK, you'll see the tire assembly or the tire snaps in place too. So that's what we want. I'm gonna add this. I'm gonna add another tire, drag it out, spin it around, confirm. Okay. So this is what happens if you don't select the center edge or the center of the circle. So I'm gonna make another joint. I'll just select this one first. So that's the correct edge. But for example, if I accidentally selected like the middle of this arc here instead of the center like this, if I move the mouse just slightly, you'll see that it's not centered. Again, why I recommend you zoom in a lot, because when that happens, oh, well, it's kind of hard to visualize in this way. I'll do it the other way. So I'm going to select the wrong edge here. So again, I'm selecting this edge instead of the center, like that. I'm going to select this edge. And then when I click the right one here, you'll see that it's not spinning the way I want it to, right? It's not spinning like it's true. And it's because it's rotating along that edge and not the center of the circle. So to fix that, I can delete that selection off the first one and then specify the center. So here. Now when I fix it, it's spinning true when I preview the motion. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I'll let all of you kind of run free to do this work on this assembly for a little bit. Remember, for this assignment, if you want to look at the rubric, appearances, oh, I closed it already. The appearances are something that is like required, or yeah, required for this assignment, unless you don't want points. So that's up to you. So uses appearances. So make sure you add those appearances. And then let me know if you have any questions with these. How do you see the motion? Good question. So if you go under motion, there's like a preview button. So if you click on it, you should be able to preview it. And then also if you did the joint correctly, because it's set to revolute, you should be able to hold down and drag and spin the things that can spin. In this case, I can spin the wheel. It's pretty cool. So the motion button is when when you're in the joint and there's a motion tab right here next to position, and then you can preview it. Once you've exited the joint, then like there's no really like preview motion button for everything. Unless you like animate it or something.
Also, just another question for the all the past assignments, were we supposed to put appearances on them?
Just for the ones that like specify in the rubric. So like for the blocks, they were supposed to have appearances. the game
I
piece
don't,
was
I don't think
supposed
I
to
did
have
anything for
that.
the last three, the last homework assignment, like the hair dryer, like
Oh,
anything
yeah,
like
yeah. For
that.
the hair dryer, I'm pretty sure that wasn't required. Uh, yeah, that shouldn't be on there. Yeah. So like for the gear, like it's not on the rubric, so don't worry about it. Hair dryer is the same. And then like obviously the extrusion profile is just a sketch, so it
Oh, nice. Okay.
doesn't have anything. Yeah. Your final does have appearances though, so just keep that in mind. Just know how to use it. So yeah. Again, friendly reminder to anyone adding appearances to their stuff. If it's like part of the rubric, please like make sure it's not like gray or anything, because if it's gray, I'll just think that you didn't do it. Um, for the most part, it's only like a couple points, so it may not like hurt you that much. But if you do want those points, then like don't use gray. All right, there was a request to do the wheel and axle again. So I'm gonna insert the component just like the rest of them. It's the general area that I want it to be. Uh, Confirm it right here. And then I'm going to make my joint. So joint, I'm on the simple joint. So I just have to select one feature per part. I'm going to make sure, again, I like to zoom in a lot just to make sure I'm selecting the right one. You can see that there's a bunch of snaps that we don't want. So what we're looking for, like kind of where this icon is in this scenario, it may not always be there. But you'll see that there's this thing following my mouse. If I put it on the right spot on the edge, it'll move away from my mouse and then center it on the axle or the circle that we have here. So I'm going to confirm that. And then I'm going to go back over to the axle that we want to join it to and then select the corresponding edge. So I selected like this inside part of the wheel. So I'm going to click on this inside part of the axle. Typically, I double click there. Um, and then for motion, I set the type to revolute. So there's two different tabs here. So setting it to revolute will allow it to spin. And you can confirm it spins correctly when you preview the motion. Okay, there was another request to do the subassembly again, so I'm going to do that as well. I can find my mouse. Okay, so to create a subassembly, it's just like creating another general assembly. So I'm gonna create a new design with the plus button and I hold Control S to save it. Name it something. And then I'm gonna insert components again. So typically, I mean, this is just personal preference. I just like inserting the wheel first instead of the tire. So it's just there. I'm not really going to move it. So I'm going to confirm that. And then I insert the tire. Again, I like to move it away just so I can confirm its resting place when I join it. Press OK. You can see kind of can move freely, but I'm going to fix that. So joint, simple joint. I'm going to select this edge of the tire and then this edge of the wheel. Oh, you don't even have to double click anymore. This is amazing. So I guess not SolidWorks. Fusion updated some of their assembly stuff, so it's actually a lot nicer now. For motion, I'm going to set it from revolute to rigid. So just like that. If I preview it, you see that they're shaking just because they're all one piece. I'm going to press OK. And then I'm going to make sure I save it again. So when I save it again, you can even see in like the preview before it was blank. Um, and now that it's saved, you can see the subassembly. Like for this one, I haven't saved it yet, so it's like completely blank. But when I save it, you should see like the model preview updates. So once you have the subassembly, you can drag the whole subassembly into your main assembly. So don't drag like the wheel and the tire, drag the subassembly. When you do, then you can, oops, whoa, where did that go? Oh, there it is. I'm gonna delete that. And I'm gonna join it. Again, making sure the mini origin is in the center. Gonna change the motion to revolute and confirm it. And it spins. Does this all make sense to everyone? All right. How can I connect the steering wheel base? So assuming that you have that steering wheel base there, I personally would add this, I would add this piece first. So I would like join this corner and that corner with this one and this one. And then when I add like the steering wheel base, I can join like this top corner to the top corner on the steering wheel base and then like this side edge right here, or this side edge, not corner, it's an edge. So I'll just do that now. Yeah, I mean, I think you can, like if you use like a simple joint, but personally, like I would just assemble it in this way. Um, but again, it's personal preference. So okay. So not all of you may be done with that with this assignment, and that's totally okay. I'm just gonna quickly go over your homework and then let everyone go. If you have any more questions about joints or just anything about this class or even life in general, I'd be happy to talk about it after class. I don't know if I'm good at giving life advice, but I can try. Uh, Anyways, I'm gonna go over homework real quick. It's very similar to what you're doing like right now. So the one extra bit is that you get to create your own design. So you can utilize like the bricks that I've given you today, or you can go online and find bricks elsewhere. So I'm just gonna show you like a couple of resources. Um, Not all of them have like Lego bricks, but um, I'm also just showing you these resources um, for like when you do other things like, I don't know, making cars or something, or just like stuff non-Lego related, if you get what I'm saying. So a lot of the times there's a bunch of standardized parts out there that people have designed, right? So like for example, like a skateboard bearing is a very common bearing. It's called a 608 bearing. And when you design things, so like, I design things that utilize skateboard bearings sometimes just because like they're cheap and I have like a bunch of them lying around. Um, if I want to, kind of have like a representation of that bearing, like I'm lazy, right? I don't want to CAD a ball bearing that already exists, right? So a lot of the times you can go and look for it online and find it. So one website that I like a lot is called GrabCAD. Um, so if I go in my browser real quick, type in GrabCAD, you'll see that, oops, not there. GrabCAD has a library of CAD models. where people will upload their designs, right? So, you know, you'll find complete stuff from like, this underwater uh vehicle to like go-karts and basically anything that you could think of is on here. Like this very specific chair. Um, but because people upload stuff here, you can often find things that you're looking for. So in my case, let's look for a 608 bearing. You can see, there's a bunch of some of them, these aren't right, but like some of these are correct. Like this 608 bearing seems right. So if you click on it, you can download it. Um, this one's like pretty in depth where they even have all like the balls inside of it. So utilizing stuff like GrabCAD is a really great way to save yourself some time, but also make your designs look, more professional um, and just nice. Um, Another one that's great, if you haven't heard of it, it's called McMaster Car. It's actually a place where you can like buy a lot of hardware. But for a lot of their stuff, they have 3D model downloads for a lot of their stuff. So if you go to McMaster, you can buy a bunch of stuff on here. You can even buy like Swedish fish, which I think is kind of funny, but I don't think they have CAD models of that here. But like, they have bearings here, so you could probably find a 608 bearing on McMaster as well. I find that it's really great for stuff like hardware, or, just stuff that you can buy from McMaster. So like one of the projects I'm working on right now for work, um, we're using like a motor and a gearbox that you can just buy from McMaster. Um, what was it called? Compact geared motors. Yeah. So like here, there's like this motor and gearbox, and you can download these models and upload them to Fusion or whatever design software you're using. So, let's say I was making this, just download it. Oh, that's the wrong software. But if I upload it, I can, okay, it's not finished uploading yet. This might take a while. But you get the idea. You can use a lot of these websites to find like different hardware or just stuff um, for your designs. But you can also use these. In this case, for your assignment, you can use these to get things like Lego bricks. So you'll see here, like some people already have some pieces. Some of them are like, you know, that might be pretty useful for your designs. But you can see that like there's just a bunch of stuff. And this isn't the only website that you can go to. Um, some of these are also pretty good. I think I used 3D Content Central a couple times. Some of these websites will ask you to make an account, but you have like a junk email, you can just throw it in. You should be able to get a lot of this stuff for free. Um, I highly recommend you don't buy some of these files if they do cost money, especially for like this assignment. Um, but if you did need to buy like 3D models, that's something that you could do as well. But for this assignment, please don't spend your hard-earned money to create your own design. If you really want to, you can just use what I've already given you to make stuff. Can you show how to attach the bottom 2x4 to the chassis? Yes. I think it's still trying to open the that piece. Okay, the assignment says to use 25 different Lego bricks. Does that mean 25 distinct types or 25 in the assembly? I will say 25 in the assembly. So technically, if you wanted to stack 25 of the same brick, you totally could. But I encourage you to be creative, and try to make something cool. Um, but again, I'm not your parent, so I can't tell you what to do. I can only recommend you to do things. Okay, so for this 2x2, I think I did a simple joint for this one. So just that one and this spot. Well, I'm lagging pretty bad. Okay, let's try that again. There it goes. So yeah, I'll do that again. So I think, yeah, so I can, oh, this is really nice. Okay, this is also new. I can kind of snap to the center right here when I make a simple joint. And then I can also snap to the center here. And when I do that, it should snap and be nice and centered. Okay, this is really exciting because last time I taught this, which is only a couple weeks ago, these joint features, I didn't have these joint features, or like they didn't snap like that before. So that's actually really nice. But yeah, if you finish this assignment and you did your homework already, I mean, you're totally free to go. I mean, I'm done for today, so if you have other things to do, feel free to go for it. Again, make sure you fill out the attendance form before you leave if you haven't already. But with that, I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you quickly show how to add the appearance onto the thing?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the shortcut is A. So if you press A on your keyboard, it should pop up. Um, I go under Fusion Appearances. And then you can kind of choose whatever appearance you like. I typically just go with paint, um, just because it's nice and colorful. Um, you might have to download the color or appearance. So like if I wanted blue, I could just download blue. And then it should just be drag and drop. So, if I want this piece to be blue, I'll just drag it onto there. I want, I don't know, the wheel to be black or the tire to be black. I can just do that like that. But yeah, is that good?
Yeah, that's good.
Sweet. Does any of you have any extra questions? I'll hang out till around 7:30. The last piece? Yeah, I can. Oops. Okay, so we have this part. I'm gonna open a joint. I'm gonna go under simple constraint. Gonna snap to this center of the axle piece right here. You can see um, the origin or the little origin thingy is kind of on there. And then I can choose corresponding one to this piece. This should be here. And they should fly into place. Oh yeah, for some reason, like the steering wheel doesn't like accepting appearances for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I need to look into it because I didn't make these models, so it might be something in the piece that might be blocking that. But I wouldn't worry about it. Um, like as long as everything else is like colored, then like you should get full points. Um, oh yeah, so if you're curious about the extra credit, um, like it's like a surface modeling assignment, so it's a little bit out of the scope for this class. And I personally don't really surface model that much in general. So I made it extra credit. Uh, so there's a bunch of slides that like can walk you through like the surface modeling assignment. So you're just making the Amelia Earhart airplane. And if if you have time and you want to go through it, you can run through these instructions here, and then you should end up with a plane that looks kind of like this. Um, so yeah, it's totally up to you. If you want to go for it. Typically, I might have like one or two students do it. So if you're like the brave soul who wants to do it, then uh, I will congratulate you and you'll get extra credit. Yeah, no problem. Any other questions? Okay. Well, in that case, it's 7:31. I got some 3D prints to take care of, so I'm gonna go work on that now. But I will see you all next week.